You're listening to the voice of Nassau Community College 90.3 WHPC. My name is Bill McIntyre, and it's time for this week's Long Island News, the show that talks to newsmakers from Nassau and Suffolk County that matter to Long Island and Long Islanders like you. So each week we'll have a conversation about issues that affect all of us. I live on Long Island just like you, and I do want to know more about where my tax dollars are going, and I want to know more about the people making the big decisions that affect all of us. This week is the first of a two-part episode where I'm very happy to welcome my guest for an extended conversation that I hope you'll enjoy listening to. Please help me welcome to the show New York Democratic Assemblywoman Gina Sillitti from Assembly District 16, which covers most of the town of North Hempstead. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. So I just want to say it's my first time doing like a radio interview in the booth with the microphones. So this is very exciting for me. Zoom's over.
Well, yeah. And to make a point, a lot of the interviews we do are over Zoom. But
yeah.
You made a point to come in.
Yeah. I wanted to see how, how it was made.
Yep. No, that's great. I mean, there's a lot of issues, but why don't, let's start. Tell us where you came from and,
sure.
A little bit about you.
Yeah, let's do that. So, first, let me tell you about my district. Nassau County, Town of North Hempstead. It's the northwest corner of Nassau County. So, Port Washington, Great Neck, Manhasset, North New Hyde Park, the Herrick School District. Got a little bit of Roslyn, kind of nibbles around the edges there. Beautiful, North Shore District, incredible school districts, incredible people, and a really great electorate that I serve. I worked in government. I mean, that's, a lot of different people get to elected office different ways. We've got a lot of lawyers. I'm not a lawyer. But I worked in government. I worked in all different layers of government. So I thought it gave me a very unique sort of perspective when I got to the legislature, because I knew my local mayors, I knew my town officials, I knew my county officials, and it kind of gave me, I thought, a leg up once I started in office. And I just got reelected to my second term. So it was my first reelection. And here we are, I got sworn in a couple of weeks ago, which was very funny because it was in person for the first time.
Oh, right.
2 years ago when I got sworn in, I was like swearing into a computer screen looking at everybody's bellies. It was very official. But yeah, no, we were in the chambers and all of my colleagues were there. So it was like being new all over again. So it was very, very special. And so yeah, I'm excited to get started and continuing working for this district and this, beautiful place that I live.
And it's a 2-year term. Right?
It is, yeah, which is, woof. Yeah, 2 years is tough.
Seems kind of quick.
It is, because especially, when you're first starting out, and also the pandemic, like that first year, everything was remote. I never got to see my colleagues. I did go up to Albany though. A lot of people did remote, which was fine. Everybody did what they had to do. But I felt I wanted to go up, one, because I wanted to learn.
Yeah.
I was hoping maybe I'd learn by osmosis just by being there. But, I got to be there. I got to meet staff and, staff that would normally be, running around dealing with 150 other assembly members. It was like me and a few other people. So I really felt like I, got to know the lay of the land, so to speak, before things got started. But like once you start figuring things out, then all of a sudden it's like, all right, now you got to run for re-election again.
Yeah,
that was fun. It was tough.
Yeah,
it's tough. But I think like now, I'm much more ready to hit the ground running. It's, much less learning curve. I'm still learning every day. I mean, the acronyms.
Oh, sure.
The acronyms alone get you, feet all twisted. But once you get some of those, under your belt, it's much easier to get things going.
It just seems like government in general is a lumbering dinosaur.
It's very complicated.
And so 2 years, I mean, to start a program or to start a groundswell of support for something.
Yes.
Let's just say, the next time this person that did this doesn't get elected, they got to hand that off to somebody to make sure.
Continuity of government kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's so funny that you said, the labyrinth of government. Yeah. I tell a quick story. I had a constituent that reached out to our office talking about pole light, the lights on the poles on Northern Boulevard. And Northern Boulevard is a state road, but you talk about multi-jurisdictional, especially on the North Shore. I represent a lot of villages, town, county, the whole thing. Excuse me. So he was like, oh, the light was there. Now it's not. Why'd you take it down? I'm like, I didn't take it down. Well, I'll find out who took it down. Well, a year and a half later, swear. Nobody could take responsibility. Nobody knew what happened to the light. Maybe it fell down. There was literally zero record of this magical unicorn of a light. Eventually, the light came on. I have no idea. I have no idea who put it up. I have no idea what happened, but it took a year and a half and the constituent is very happy. But if it took our office so long, right, I can't imagine. And I always tell everybody I meet, call me. Even if it's not a state issue, I could point you in the right direction because there's so many layers of government.
Yes.
And I've worked in a lot of them. Our office can help you navigate, which is honestly half the battle of getting things done.
I don't think a lot of people, and I've kind of learned that doing this job, is, most of the elected legislators will say, call my office. But we as the electorate feel like, well, it's just a little problem. I don't want to bother the big government about who's going to need, and it seems to be true. If you have a problem in your, where you live or call, start at the bottom of the list and work your way up.
And I try also to be very accessible, so people feel comfortable talking to me. Like, oh, there's Gina. I saw her in the grocery store. You could talk to her. Right. But also on a government side, not just, being in the community and the neighborhood, we do mobile office hours. We go to all the libraries in the district and we say, come visit us, talk to us. You don't have to come all the way to my office in Port Washington, obviously, or my office in Albany. Yeah. I'll come to you. We'll talk and we'll figure things out. If it's not a state issue, again, we can try our best to point you in the right direction. We have good relationships with other elected officials on both sides of the aisle.
So you're right. I mean, it did help you being in the midst of the machinations of government to, when you became, you got your job. Now you know how, at least you can't know how it all works.
No.
I don't think anybody does.
No.
But to have a sense of that and just say, no, don't bother going there. That'll take forever.
Also people are, very cynical about government and elected officials. And I really want to kind of break that down and I'm a regular person, I go to work, I come home, I cook for my family, the whole thing. And I'm a politician, but I'm just like you,
you have a regular life, which,
and I live here too. And I care about this community just as much as you do. And so I really want people to feel comfortable around me, and that they could talk to me about anything.
Yeah. Well, are you feeling optimistic?
I always have a positive attitude.
Well, it helps. It helps.
But it's hard, right? I mean, the pandemic made things hard to feel optimistic. It's, inflation, which, happily is, seems to be coming down. Gas prices, we instituted the gas holiday, the gas tax holiday, to try to get some relief at the pump, and the prices are going down. It's not as much as they were before. So I feel like things are going in the right direction. Our state is in good fiscal shape, thank goodness. And, I feel like things are going in the right direction, but there's still certainly concerns. I mean, I heard about it. I always hear about it. My residents are not shy, which is fine. Talking about important things that are important to them. The environment, infrastructure where we live. We had a lot of rainstorms and regular storms that are overwhelming our communities. Obviously, public safety is on the minds of during the election, certainly on the minds of a lot of residents. And those are definitely the issues that I want to keep tackling and tackle this next session. Yeah,
we heard about your district in the last big rainstorms because things happened that had never happened before.
I know. These 500-year storms are happening more and more frequently, but this was one of those things in September of 2 years ago 2021. It was devastating. It rained and rained and rained, and people were having water literally coming up from beneath their homes. They had rivers running through their houses. They had water and sewage coming up from underneath their houses. And then over where I live, in the village of Manor Haven in Port Washington, there's sort of a cliff behind at the end of our village that goes up to Sands Point. The rain literally took the earth and slid it down like the mudslides in California. Same thing, covering people's backyards and homes. Thank God, nobody was hurt. But a lot of damage in a very short period of time. FEMA eventually came in, which was incredibly helpful. But at the end of the day, it wasn't enough. FEMA gives you just enough that to basically live. Like if you're in an unlivable situation, they give you enough that you can get to a livable situation. Right. But it just, with my mudslide folks, they had tens of thousands of dollars to just get the mud out, not enough to clean or put things back together. And so one of the things that I did with my colleagues was push for state money. They did it in some of the floods in upstate New York years ago. I was like, they could do it for that. They could do it for Long Island. So we got money. It's federal money, so there's a lot of rules attached to it. But I was able to secure $40 million in IDA funding. It's a specific IDA relief fund through the governor's office, and you have to apply for it. The applications aren't open yet, and once they are, we're going to let everybody know. Maybe you can help and let your viewers know that they could apply for this. There are certainly parameters that are going to be associated with it, but hopefully it could be coupled with the FEMA money and this get people back to where they need to be, obviously in reimbursed, because a lot of people have already, done a lot of the work to get their homes. But even smaller rainstorms they're still facing a lot of these problems, especially in Great Neck. There's an area in Great Neck, it's very low lying. Regular rainstorms are creating still a lot of these water problems and sewage problems. So we got to get the infrastructure money to fix this and get it cleaned up so these poor people don't keep getting their houses flooded every time it rains, even just a minor rainstorm.
That's the thing, yeah. Well, it sounds like you got a good start on it. $40 million is nothing to sneeze at.
No, I was very, very lucky. And obviously with the help from the federal government, we got all that money, infrastructure money, and then COVID money. It was incredibly helpful to get that done.
Let me give you a quick... just a reminder, you're listening to this week's Long Island News on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Bill McIntyre, and my guest today is New York Democratic Assemblywoman Gina Sillitti from Assembly District 16, which covers most of the town of North Hempstead. Yeah, we saw things in that storm that, people would be on a road and they'd make a left-hand turn and be in a lake.
Yes. I know.
That they'd never seen before. So it wasn't like, we have some like near, I live in Massapequa. Yeah. So when you drive near the Sunrise Mall, there's a train trestle that goes up, and underneath that always gets flooded. Yep. So people know that.
Right. I can't imagine what it was during Ida. Oh my God.
No,
You're like, I avoided the area. But there were certain areas that we were lucky insofar as the water didn't stay. I don't know if it was because, we're surrounded by water and it went right into the bay in the Sound, but it rushed. And then as soon as the rains died down a bit, it was gone. But there were certain areas in the district, in Herrick's particularly, along Herrick's Road and Hillside, that just stayed. It sat and it stayed. And so trying to figure out why that happened, was it the sump? Is it drainage? And that's, again, going to like the many layers of government, that would be a county issue. So, we have, town drainage, village drainage, county drainage, all these different, entities trying to figure out, how to fix things going forward. And, and I said to all of them, if I could be any help, obviously, but, we were talking to them and, trying to move forward, get studies done, figuring out how to fix this. And then
it's one thing to fix the existing issue. Okay, so you got a lot of dirt that went someplace it shouldn't be.
Right.
So you clean that up. That's a cost right there.
Right.
But how do you ensure that
it doesn't happen
now?
Again.
The topography is right, that the water roll doesn't drain down to this poor guy's house every time it rains. Those are the things that I think, because when they put up a lot of those neighborhoods, nobody was as diligent.
Well, you got to remember, we're America's oldest suburb, right? So we have aging infrastructure, and the voters. Thank you very much, voters. We approved an Environmental Bond Act. And I'm hopeful that we can use some of that money to do some of this upgrade in infrastructure, drinking water, sewers. North Shore of Long Island, Suffolk County doesn't have sewers. Cesspools. It's bad for the environment from an economic development standpoint. And also we have to move away from, the fact that it would lead to overdevelopment. This is an environmental issue. Our bays are, full of all kinds of things you don't want to talk about. We got to clean those up, and that's where that would come in.
Yeah.
So.
And those are long-term things that would need funding over a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
Many, many billions of dollars, Bill.
Yeah.
Right.
So, it's like you feel like Don Quixote sometimes, tilting at, is this thing really ever going to get fixed?
I know. And that's my frustration. Imagine, and I'm in the thick of it.
Right.
And imagine how the residents feel.
Yeah. And then the lumbering dinosaur that is government.
I know.
Is like,
everything takes forever.
I just heard a thing on, I believe it was CBS News. They just talked about there were 50,000 bridges in the United States. And almost every one of them is way past its lifespan.
Newsday actually did a report on that. I believe it was last year, and they identified multiple on Long Island, 3 of which were in my district.
Lucky you.
I know, lucky me. They're structurally sound, just so the residents know, but they need to be addressed, and money needs to be put into them.
I think, ironically, the safest bridge in the New York area is probably the Brooklyn Bridge.
The
and
oldest
it was made
one.
in the 19th century.
I know.
With bricks.
Right.
And you think, okay, so where's the progress?
Right.
The 59th Street Bridge scares the bejeebies out of me every time I go over it.
Yeah.
Because I know it's been there so long, and I'm sure they've done maintenance, but all I've ever seen them do is paint.
I know.
And I just keep thinking that paint's not going to keep that bridge together too long.
What is the saying? They don't make them like they used to, Bill?
Yeah, well, yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. But, the good news is that, my understanding is that they're checked. Everything is checked regularly. And certainly after that article came out for the Long Island bridges, everything was, sort of given a once over. And, that's the good news. But, the bad news is that those things need to be addressed. It's, we're an old state. Right. We're an old community. We're an aging community as far as infrastructure and homes and whatnot. And, these are the things that unfortunately we have to deal with now. You can't keep kicking the can down the road. Right. The can's here.
Well, we get the impression that, okay, they built a bridge. Great. Now we got a bridge and nothing else. It's like we don't have to think about it now. Oh, yes, you do.
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Forward thinking. Mm-hmm. But here we are.
I actually have a list of topics, and I think we've already covered some of them. I wasn't even looking at it. Newsday reported 2 years ago on your to-do list was a critical need for sewers along Plandome Road in Manhasset. How would you make out on that?
Well, I was very lucky. We were able to secure last year $5 million for the Plandome Road sewer project. This is a business corridor in Manhasset, right near the train station, the heart of Manhasset. Right. And the businesses were struggling. I mean, they were struggling before COVID. Obviously, COVID just exacerbated the problem. But the amount of money that it cost the restaurants and some of the businesses to pump out, the whatnot, was astronomical, tens of thousands of dollars. And, but by putting sewers in, which isn't going to be obviously an expense, it will save them so much money. So from an economic development standpoint, hopefully it will be a revitalization of Plandome Road. But then also environmentally, you got the bay, Manhasset Bay, right there.
Yeah. The other thing is that initially that's going to be a real headache for those businesses when they start digging up the road.
It's not pleasant, right? But they
it has to be done.
Right. All the businesses are on board, and this is the great part about this particular project is that the civic associations and the Chamber of Commerce did their due diligence. They got the business, made sure the businesses were on board. Then they also made sure the residents were on board, because there is and I think I mentioned it to you before, there is a perception about sewers, that it will lead to overdevelopment and all these different things. And, and Manhasset, is small in this area. It's not conducive. But what they did is they held a series of these small community meetings, like the various civics, and explained what the project would be, what they're looking to do, and how this would be beneficial to Plandome Road, the region, the bay, and all the different things, and also explain what type of pipe was going in there. This was this low gravity pipe, and it would be just for basically the amount of, what, and not
effluent.
Yes, effluent. There's the word, Bill, effluent. And that's all it would be. And so the residents, for the most part, obviously there's a few that have concerns, but the residents were on board, the businesses, the chamber, the civics, like all the things. So when I went in and asked for this money, I was able to show the full breadth of community support, and that this project was ready to go with the Great Neck Water Pollution Control District, the businesses, and the community. So I had asked for obviously more than $5 million, but you ask for more and you get. And I was obviously incredibly grateful for the $5 million. So that would basically be the cost of the pipe itself.
Okay.
And the installation. Then there's other pieces to it. There's the spurs that would go to the business. That's a technical term apparently. Spurs. Think of like little pipes sticking out of the pipe.
Right. Branches. And that's a separate cost that can be government funded and bonded. But then there's the cost of the businesses to hook up, which is on their own. It can't be a government can't pay for it. Right. So it's an expense, but I feel like the ones who certainly, spend a lot of money doing what they need to do with the cesspools, they're going to hook up. I'm not concerned about it. And so that's sort of where we're at. The state, and the Great Neck Water Pollution Control District are, they're working out the portal and how to get the money and do all the back stuff. And then hopefully we can move this thing forward. There's it wasn't too long ago. I used to be in the business. I sold, equipment to construction people, pipe, all of those things.
Right.
There was a time when, I don't know if it was the DEC or the EPA, but they mandated that all rainwater had to be treated before it was sent back out into the bay or wherever you want to send it. And I don't think, when I was a kid, you could go to the beach and there would be an advisory, you shouldn't swim.
Right.
We never had a policeman standing on the shore saying you can't swim.
Right.
It's no longer an advisory.
Yeah.
If a police officer tells you can't go in the water and you do,
right.
you will be arrested.
Right.
That was never a condition in my childhood.
Right.
And then you see, like we saw Louisiana with the floods and people walking around in that flood water. I don't think that most of the people realize that that's effluent.
Right.
That's not just rainwater.
Right.
And that's why it's dangerous to do.
Yes.
But what happened with the mandate from the EPA is that now that all the rainwater was going to be treated, there are only 13 water treatment plants in the tri-state area for tens of millions of people.
Right.
So that's 8 pounds in a 4-pound bag, kind of.
Essentially.
And the population is growing. The wastewater treatment plants are not.
Right. And I've heard this from, my local water pollution control districts. It's so funny. Nobody ever wants to say what it actually does. Yeah. So we have all these funny, different names for it. Affluent, water pollution control. But
dirty water works.
Essentially, yes. And they are doing the best they can with what they have. I have a list from a lot of my locals of things that they need to do for upgrades and to handle the amount of people that are here. Because again, it's all aging infrastructure. It's all things that they built decades and decades ago.
And then you have to think of, well, what do we fix? Or what do we replace?
Right. And I also say, give me priority. Like, what is what's the first thing that you got to do before it's going to go? And, all these different things.
Right. It's a real juggling act because, if you have a $40 million job and you secured $10 million,
right.
Okay, well,
now what?
What do we do? Yeah, right. And can we spend $10 million and stop the project until we get more money, or do we have to hold back and not do anything until we've got all the money?
Right. And some things, that we secure funds for certainly will go towards the pot to get the project done. With Plandome Road, the $5 million, it's enough to get the pipe in, but it's all the other pieces.
Yeah.
The road is where the pipe is going to go, but the sidewalk is where the spurs and the hookups are going to go. So that's a separate. That's going to be my understanding. But going back to the Environmental Bond Act, which I was talking about before, it's a significant amount of money. That's the goal is to go to these kinds of things. Water,
right?
Sewers,
the big stuff,
environment stuff, the things that the environment that we live in. So yes, the big stuff.
Yeah.
And I certainly am going to be doing my best to go after that money because I got a lot of projects. Yeah,
and if we don't do them, someone should write a book on what that would be like.
I know.
No sewers, and let's go back to outhouses, right? Imagine.
Well, and there's certain things, it's like, oh, don't flush at this time, run your water, there's all these different things. And that is all because of, aging infrastructure
It just
issues.
reminded me of one of the useless pieces of information that I carry around in my head is that's how they used to tell how many people were watching a football game. If you had the Super Bowl on, they would wait till halftime and then look at the water pressure because everyone went to the bathroom and flushed the toilet. And they could actually tell you
I love that.
How many people by the gallons of water were watching the game.
It's incredible what you can find out by, the toilet. We were learning COVID patterns and COVID rates, and now, unfortunately, polio, which was eradicated in the 70s and now is, back.
And it was a news story last week that up in Westchester, there was no sign of polio.
Thank God.
And I think we were looking for that.
Yeah.
Because that's been history in my lifetime.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And there are people that, they test for all different things, right? It's not that and so these are the things that they found, but it's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Not sure I'd want that job, P.S. Bill.
No, right.
But it's fascinating.
It's forensic science. Right. It's really what it is.
It really is.
We're getting close, so the clock on the wall is going to yell at me. And
there's going to be a part 2, folks.
Yes,
you're not going to want to miss it.
Yeah. But this is great. A half an hour is just not enough. I know. I know
we could talk for days.
If we were sitting someplace else, we wouldn't be done till Monday.
Right.
My guest today has been New York Democratic Assemblywoman Gina Sillitti from Assembly District 16, which covers most of the town of North Hempstead. We do still have so much to talk about, and you've been nice enough to come back for another 30 minutes. So we can continue the conversation then. How's that?
Sounds good.
Okay. Well, the clock on the wall says it's time for this week's Long Island News to get on out of here. I'm Bill McIntyre. Remember, you can listen to us by searching for this week's Long Island News wherever you listen to podcasts. And again, we're right here every Friday at 3 p.m. on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.